After 5 years together, my husband said, "You're not deserving of being my wife. I'll find someone better." And then he walked out of my life like it was nothing. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I laughed. What happened after that still feels unreal, because now his new girlfriend is dating someone else, and he's been desperately trying to come back to me. Except he doesn't realize his voicemails are being heard by my new husband. And what happened next destroyed everything. Before I tell you how my entire life flipped upside down and somehow landed in a better place, do me a small favor. Subscribe to the channel, leave a comment about where you're watching from, and help this story reach people who might need to hear it. I'm Ruby Anderson. I'm 29 years old, and for a long time, I thought love meant trying harder, being better, and proving your worth to the person you chose. Caleb and I were together for 5 years. We met in Madison, Wisconsin, back when everything felt simple. We bonded over late-night food runs, the same comfort shows, and the idea that we were building something solid together. The first couple of years were genuinely good. We moved into Lakeshore Heights apartments after about a year and a half. My parents had their concerns, but they trusted me to make my own choices. Caleb used to do the little things that make you feel chosen. Coffee on the nightstand. Random videos sent during the workday because this reminded me of you. Long conversations about nothing that somehow meant everything. When he proposed on our 3rd anniversary at Lake Mendota Overlook, it felt right. It wasn't flashy, but it was intimate. I said yes without hesitation, called my mom in tears, and immediately started imagining a future that felt safe. We got married quietly not long after, nothing extravagant. I truly believed I was marrying my best friend. But about a year into the marriage, something started shifting. At first, it was so subtle I questioned whether I was imagining it. Little comments slipped in, how a certain outfit would look better if I tightened up a bit, or how a different hairstyle might make me look more polished. They weren't insults exactly, just suggestions. I laughed them off. Then the comments spread beyond my appearance. He started questioning my job, hinting that I wasn't ambitious enough. He'd correct me in front of his friends if I said something he thought was wrong, always with a laugh that made me feel stupid for being embarrassed. He even made remarks about my family being too simple and how I needed to elevate myself if I was going to represent him properly. I wish I could say I shut it down immediately. I didn't. Instead, I internalized it. I changed my hair, bought new clothes, worked longer hours, took online courses because he said I needed to be more cultured. Looking back, it's painful how much of myself I tried to reshape just to fit into his idea of a wife. The breaking point came 3 months before what would have been our big wedding celebration with extended family. We were discussing final details when he brought up my dress, one he hadn't even seen yet. He said his family was worried I'd choose something expected instead of classy. When I asked what that meant, something in him snapped. He went on a rant about how he'd been settling, about how he was starting to realize I wasn't wife material for someone like him, that his family had concerns about whether I could represent him properly in social circles. Then he looked me straight in the eye and said the sentence that changed everything. "You're not deserving of being my wife. I can do better." For years together, a marriage, and that's what he reduced me to. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I laughed, an ugly, uncontrollable laugh that shocked both of us. The absurdity hit me all at once. This man, who had slowly chipped away at my confidence, was telling me I wasn't enough. Caleb didn't like my reaction. He demanded to know what was so funny. I told him he was right. We shouldn't be together. Not because I wasn't worthy, but because I deserved better than someone who made me feel small just to feel powerful. I grabbed my purse and walked out. I went straight to my best friend, Sophie Miller's place. The tears came later, after the shock wore off. 5 years is a long time to invest in someone. Ending it hurt, but underneath the pain was relief. Like dropping a weight I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. Caleb's messages started almost immediately. First angry, calling me dramatic. Then apologetic, blaming stress. Then condescending again, saying I'd regret leaving him and that I was running out of time at my age. I didn't respond. I stayed with Sophie for 2 weeks, while canceling plans and untangling a life we'd built together. Going back to the apartment to get my things was brutal. I went when I thought he'd be at work, but he showed up halfway through. He swung between begging me to come back and warning me that I'd never find someone better. What stood out wasn't heartbreak, it was ego. He was more worried about what people would say than about losing me. He never once said he loved me. That's when I knew, without doubt, I was done. I found a small apartment across town at Willow Creek Residences and moved in alone for the first time in my life. It was terrifying and freeing. I could exist without being evaluated. I could be myself again. And that was just the beginning. The first month after I moved into Willow Creek Residences felt unreal, like I was living someone else's life on a trial basis. My apartment was small, but it was mine. No commentary on my decor choices. No judgment if I wore the same sweatshirt 2 days in a row. No feeling like I was being quietly assessed and found lacking. At night, though, the silence was loud. I'd reach for my phone out of habit, wanting to tell Caleb something stupid and mundane, like how the neighbor's dog barked at its own reflection or how I finally figured out how to work the old thermostat. Then I'd remember there was no us anymore. Some nights I cried. Other nights, I felt strangely peaceful. Healing, I learned, isn't consistent. Caleb didn't take the breakup quietly. At first, his messages came fast and emotional. Long paragraphs about how stressed he'd been, how he hadn't meant what he said, how marriage was just overwhelming him. When I didn't respond, the tone shifted. He started saying I was overreacting. That couple's fight. That I was throwing away 5 years over one sentence. Then came the condescension. He told me I'd never find someone who challenged me the way he did. That I'd regret leaving a man who pushed me to be better. He even joked once that I'd probably end up alone with cats because I took things too personally. I blocked his number. About 6 weeks after the breakup, Sophie called me furious. She'd heard through mutual friends that Caleb was telling people I'd had some kind of emotional breakdown and that's why the marriage ended. According to him, he tried to help me, but I was unstable and walked away. For about 5 minutes, I considered correcting the record. I imagined posting screenshots, defending myself, explaining everything. Then I realized something important. The people who mattered already knew the truth. What surprised me was how many people reached out quietly. Friends I hadn't seen in a while, co-workers, even one of Caleb's cousins, Emily Carter. She told me she'd always hated how he spoke to me and was proud of me for leaving. That validation mattered more than I expected. As the weeks passed, Caleb's messages slowed down but became more calculated. He'd send things like, just drove past that place we used to love, or saw your favorite movie is back in theaters. Never apologies, just reminders, breadcrumbs. I didn't respond. Around this time, Sophie convinced me to get back out into the world socially, not dating, just existing. One weekend, she dragged me to her brother Evan's birthday gathering. I almost canceled at the last minute, but something told me staying home alone would feel worse. That night changed everything. That's where I met Noah Bennett. He was Evan's best friend from college in town for the weekend. We didn't flirt aggressively. We just talked about podcasts, about bad jobs we'd had in our early 20s, about fears we didn't usually admit out loud. At some point, we ended up sitting on the porch steps, talking while everyone else drifted in and out. There was no pressure, no performance, just ease. Noah asked for my number before he left, and I surprised myself by giving it to him. The next day, he texted asking if I wanted to grab coffee before he headed back home. That coffee turned into lunch. Lunch turned into a walk. We spent the entire day together. He lived about 40 minutes away, close enough to see each other, far enough that nothing felt rushed. We started dating slowly, carefully. I told him early on that I wasn't looking to jump into anything serious. He didn't push. He didn't question it. He just said he was happy to see where things went. The contrast between Noah and Caleb was startling. Noah listened. Actually listened. He asked questions and remembered the answers. He never commented on my appearance unless it was to say I looked happy. He never suggested I should be more anything. I didn't feel like I was auditioning for the role of good enough. 3 months into dating Noah, I ran into Caleb. It happened at Greenway Plaza Market. I'd built this moment up in my head for weeks. Imagined feeling sick, jealous, insecure. Instead, when I saw him standing there with a woman I recognized from Sophie's gossip, HarperCollins, I felt nothing. We exchanged brief hellos. Caleb looked surprised at how calm I seemed. Harper smiled politely, clearly uncomfortable. The entire interaction lasted less than a minute, but it felt like closure. A few days later, Caleb texted me for the first time in months. It was good seeing you. You look well. Would love to catch up sometime as friends. I showed the message to Noah. He didn't tell me what to do. He didn't get territorial or jealous. He just asked what I wanted. I didn't respond to Caleb. As my relationship with Noah deepened, something unexpected happened. I started trusting myself again. I trusted my instincts, my boundaries, my worth. Being with someone who didn't question it helped me see how wrong things had been before. About 6 months in, Noah suggested I move in with him. The idea terrified me. My apartment had become my safe haven, but I was already spending most weekends at his place, and when I imagined living there full-time, it didn't feel like losing myself. It felt like sharing space. So I said yes. Living together wasn't perfect. We argued about thermostat settings. He left his shoes everywhere. I left cabinets open, but none of it felt personal. None of it chipped away at who I was. Through Sophie, I heard that Caleb and Harper were getting serious. He'd introduced her to his family faster than he ever had with me. Instead of jealousy, I felt pity. I wondered if she'd started noticing the same subtle criticisms I once ignored. Then the messages started again. Caleb began reaching out sporadically. Hope you're doing well. Heard you moved. Thinking about you. I didn't respond, but I didn't hide them from Noah either. Transparency felt natural now. Then came the voicemail. I was cooking dinner one night when my phone buzzed. A missed call from an unknown number. Then a voicemail notification. It was Caleb. He said he wanted to apologize properly, that he'd said things he didn't mean, that he missed me and wanted to talk in person. I didn't call him back. I texted instead, telling him I was happy in a relationship and didn't think meeting was a good idea. He replied quickly, saying he understood, that he just wanted closure. Too little, too late. Life moved forward. Noah and I built routines, game nights, weekend trips, lazy Sundays. We talked about the future, casually, without pressure. And for the first time in a long time, the idea of what's next felt exciting instead of terrifying. I didn't know then just how much Caleb would unravel, or that the real twist in this story was still ahead. By the time winter rolled into Madison, my life looked nothing like it had a year earlier. And for once, that didn't scare me. Living with Noah felt steady in a way I'd never experienced before. Not dramatic, not intense, just calm. We settled into a rhythm that didn't require me to shrink or perform. Mornings started with coffee and quiet conversation. Evenings were a mix of cooking disasters, half-finished shows, and laughing about things that would have turned into arguments in my old marriage. And somewhere in that normalcy, I realized something important. I wasn't bracing myself anymore. With Caleb, I'd always felt like I was one mistake away from criticism, one wrong outfit, one wrong opinion, one wrong reaction. With Noah, I could exist without armor. That alone felt revolutionary. Through Sophie, who remained my favorite source of unfiltered updates, I learned that things with Caleb and Harper weren't as perfect as he'd been pretending. Apparently, the shine wore off fast. Harper wasn't impressed by his constant comparisons. She didn't appreciate being told how she could improve. Funny how that pattern followed him everywhere. Around this time, Caleb's attempts to contact me escalated. It started subtly. He liked an old photo of mine on social media. Then he sent a message congratulating me on a work achievement he could only have known about by checking my profile regularly. I ignored it. Then came the late-night messages. I've been thinking a lot about us. I finally understand what I did wrong. I wish I could go back. I showed every message to Noah, not because I felt tempted, but because secrecy felt wrong now. Noah never once told me to block Caleb. He never demanded access to my phone. He trusted me, and that trust made me even more certain of my choices. Then, about 8 months after my breakup, Sophie dropped a bombshell. Harper had left Caleb. Not just left, she'd started seeing someone else. Someone she'd reconnected with through work. According to Sophie, it happened fast and Caleb hadn't seen it coming at all. The irony was almost poetic. Suddenly, Caleb's messages took on a different tone. I messed up everything. I shouldn't have let you go. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. That's when the voicemail started. Long, emotional recordings where he talked about regret, about realizing too late what he'd lost, about how no one else understood him the way I did. He said he'd been scared of commitment, scared of settling, scared of being ordinary. Listening to them didn't make me sad. It made me tired. One night, Noah and I were sitting on the couch when my phone buzzed again. Another voicemail. I sighed and tossed the phone onto the cushion between us. Noah picked it up, glanced at the notification, and looked at me gently. "Do you want me to listen to it with you?" he asked. That question alone told me everything I needed to know about the difference between the men I'd loved. We listened together. Caleb's voice cracked as he talked about mistakes and timing and fate. He said he'd never meant it when he told me I wasn't deserving of being his wife. He said he'd been projecting his own insecurities. He said he'd changed. When it ended, there was a long silence. Finally, Noah spoke. "You know you don't owe him anything, right?" I nodded. I did know that. Hearing it out loud still helped. I didn't respond to the voicemail. Life kept moving. A few months later, Noah proposed. It wasn't dramatic or public. We were having a picnic near a small lake outside town, the kind of quiet afternoon that had become our favorite. He told me he couldn't imagine building a future without me. He didn't talk about potential or improvement or expectations. He talked about partnership. I said yes without a second of hesitation. That evening, as we celebrated with champagne on the porch, my phone buzzed again. A message from Caleb, clearly sent after he'd heard the news through mutual connections. Didn't realize things were that serious. "Hope you're not rushing into something you'll regret." I showed it to Noah. He shook his head and laughed softly, not in anger but in disbelief. "Some people really don't know when to stop," he said. That night, I blocked Caleb everywhere. Completely. The peace that followed was immediate. Wedding planning with Noah was nothing like it had been before. There were no arguments about sophistication or appearances. No pressure to impress. We planned something small, intimate, focused on people who genuinely supported us. A week before the wedding, Sophie told me Caleb had been asking about me again, asking if I was happy, asking if she thought I'd ever forgive him. I didn't care anymore. Our wedding day wasn't perfect, and that made it perfect. It rained in the morning. My veil got caught on a rose bush. One of Noah's nephews loudly announced he had to pee during our vows. We laughed through all of it. We were surrounded by people who loved us for who we were, not who they wanted us to become. During the ceremony, Sophie held onto my phone just in case. Later, she told me Caleb had tried calling 3 times. I laughed. We honeymooned in Bayfield, Wisconsin, staying in a cozy lakeside Airbnb. No itinerary, no pressure, just us. For the first time in years, I felt completely present. When we got back, I had a flood of missed calls and messages, from numbers I didn't recognize, from accounts I didn't follow. All Caleb. I showed Noah. Without hesitation, he picked up my phone when it rang again. "Hello," he said calmly. There was a long pause. Then Caleb asked if Ruby was available. Noah replied, still calm, "She's unpacking from our honeymoon. This is her husband. Is there something I can help you with?" The silence on the other end was deafening. Caleb mumbled something about congratulations. Noah thanked him politely and said it would be best if there was no further contact. After the call ended, I stared at Noah in disbelief. No drama, no jealousy, just boundaries. That was the moment I fully understood what a real partner looks like. And yet, somehow, the universe wasn't done giving me closure. About a year after Noah and I got married, life finally slowed down enough for me to breathe. We bought our first house together in the Sunset Hollow neighborhood, a modest 3-bedroom ranch built sometime in the 90s, with questionable wallpaper and a kitchen that looked like it hadn't been updated since dial-up internet was a thing. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. We joked that we'd grow into it the same way we'd grown into each other, slowly with patience and a lot of learning along the way. Homeownership humbled us immediately. The dishwasher flooded the kitchen the second week we moved in. A family of squirrels had apparently been living rent-free in the attic for who knows how long. The bathroom sink gurgled ominously in the middle of the night like it was haunted. And somehow, none of it felt overwhelming. We tackled each problem together, laughing more than we argued. After a few months, we decided to host a casual housewarming party. Nothing fancy, just friends, family, food, and the backyard we were dreaming of turning into something special. Sophie brought her famous buffalo chicken dip. Noah's brothers helped set up patio furniture. People moved easily between the living room and the yard, drinks in hand, music playing low in the background. I was in the kitchen refilling the ice when Sophie walked in with a strange look on her face. "Ruby," she said carefully, "you're not going to like this." My stomach tightened. She told me Caleb was outside, uninvited. Apparently, he'd just shown up with a bottle of wine, looking slightly disheveled, insisting he wanted to congratulate us. For a split second, irritation flared. This was my home, my life, my peace. But what surprised me most was what didn't happen. I didn't feel anxious. That knot in my stomach that used to twist whenever I thought about running into him, gone. I took a deep breath and found Noah in the garage, proudly showing his dad the storage system he'd installed. When I explained the situation, Noah didn't bristle or puff up. He simply asked what I wanted to do. That question still amazes me. We decided to greet Caleb together and keep things polite. When we walked outside, he was standing awkwardly near the snack table, wine bottle in hand. He looked older somehow, tired. He handed me the bottle, and I almost laughed. It was the same kind he used to criticize me for buying because it wasn't refined enough. The conversation started stiff but civil. Compliments about the house, questions about the neighborhood. Small talk stretched thin. I introduced him to a few people as an old friend. It felt generous but also accurate. He belonged firmly in the past. Things shifted when one of Noah's cousins casually commented on how happy we seemed together, how we clearly fit. Caleb muttered something under his breath that sounded a lot like, "She wouldn't be here without me." I asked him to repeat himself, and then, as if the universe wanted one final demonstration of who he was, Caleb launched into a speech about how he'd pushed me to improve, how his criticism had motivated me, how I should almost be grateful to him because it led me to Noah. I stood there stunned, watching him rewrite history in real time. Before I could respond, Noah stepped in. Calm, steady, respectful. He said that while he was grateful I was in his life, my growth had nothing to do with being torn down by someone else. He added that we were celebrating our home and our future, and this wasn't the time for that conversation. Caleb ignored the hint. He turned to me and asked if I ever thought about what could have been if he hadn't let me go. Something in me settled then. Quietly, completely. I told him I never think about what could have been, because I'm too busy appreciating what is. I told him breaking up was the best thing that happened to both of us, and that worthiness isn't something someone else gets to decide for you. It's something you recognize when you stop accepting less. For a moment, I thought he understood. Then his expression shifted. He said I'd changed like it was an insult. Like confidence was something to mourn. Sophie appeared right on cue and mentioned she'd run into Harper recently. Apparently, Harper was dating someone new, expecting a baby, and had just bought a house. She showed us a photo. Harper looked genuinely happy. Watching Caleb process that information was surreal. He drained his drink, muttered something about another commitment, and left. Noah walked him out politely. When he came back, he told me Caleb had asked if I'd always been this stubborn. Noah said he preferred the word self-assured and suggested Caleb take an Uber home. The party went on. People whispered. Small-town gossip works fast. I didn't care. The next morning, I woke up to a single text from Caleb apologizing for causing a scene and saying he hoped I was happy. I didn't respond. Some chapters don't need footnotes. Life since then has been imperfect and full. We argue about trash duty. We're saving for renovations. We're talking about getting a dog. Sometimes old insecurities whisper, but they don't control me anymore. Looking back, being told I wasn't deserving felt like the end of my world. Now I see it was the beginning. Losing someone who needed to diminish me to feel powerful made room for a life where I'm valued without conditions. If you've stayed with me through this entire story, I hope it reminds you of something important. Your worth is not negotiable. Anyone who makes you feel small is not your person. And before you go, do me one last favor. Subscribe, leave a comment about where you're watching from, and share the story with someone who might need the reminder. Sometimes the moment that breaks you is the one that finally sets you free.